All right, here in example 3, we're to determine the point that is the 1/4 distance from the endpoint -3, 7 of the line segment -3, 7, and 5, 9. So the first thing we want to do here is actually find the difference in the x values. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the difference in the x value. So we're going to say x1 minus x2, and we're going to take the absolute value of it. So let's go -3 minus 5, which would give us -8, and then we would take the absolute value of that, and that gives us 8. So that's the difference in the x values, 8 units. So from here to here in x is 8 units. Now what we're going to do is take that number and multiply it times 1/4. And that gives us 2. Alright, so now what we're going to do is, now if you'll notice here, we're moving to the right for our x values. So we're going to take the value 2 and we're going to add it to the -3. So -3 plus 2 gives us -1. Okay, so our x value for 1/4 from here down to here is going to be -1. So that would be our x value. Now what we'll do for our y value is the same thing. Alright, so what we'll do is we'll do y1 minus y2. So we'll do 7 minus 9, -9. Okay, so that ends up being plus, so we end up with 16. Absolute value is 16. So the change in y is 16 units. And then we want to find out 1/4 of that. Alright, so here when we multiply 16 times 1/4, we'll end up with 4. Now, you notice that we're coming down in the y direction, so we'll end up subtracting. So our y value would be from the original 7 minus 4, okay, and so y is equal to 3. So our point that is 1/4, and it will be on this line, would be -1. X would be -1 and then 3. So that would be our point that is 1/4 from here. Alright, here now similar type problem. Determine the point that is 2/3 the distance from the endpoint, 2, 9 for the segment with endpoints at 2, 9 and -4, -6. Alright, so let's go ahead and find our change in x. Alright, so I'm going to take 2 minus -4, so we'll end up with 6, and so 6 is the change. Now we're going to take that and multiply it times 2/3. Now when I multiply by 2/3, I get 6 times 2 be 12/3, and so that reduces, that'll be 4. So now we have to move 4 units. Now what we'll do is, now notice that we're starting here and moving back that way. So we'll subtract 2 minus 4. So we end up with -2 as for our x. Okay, now we'll do the same thing with the y's. Alright, so we'll take 9 minus -5. So it comes to be plus, so we end up with 24. I'm sorry, not 24. 14, 15. Okay, because that should have been a 6 and not a 5. Alright, so anyway, so that should have been 15. Alright, because it's 9 plus 16, 6, which gives us 15. 15, take the absolute value is 15. Anyway. So what we're going to do here now that we've found that to be 15, is we're going to come down in y again, so we're going to subtract the y value again. So it'd be 9 minus 15, and that for our y value. So 9 minus 15 gives us, sorry, we're not going to subtract yet. We have to multiply by the 2/3. We have to take 2/3 of the distance. So 2/3 of the distance, and the change in y. So we get 15 times 2 would be 30 over 3, so that ends up being 10. So there's a change of 10. Okay, so now we'll take the 9 minus the 10, because again we're coming down. We have to come down 10 places, so 9 minus 10, and that would give us negative 1 for our y value. Okay, so what we have to do is take the difference, the distance in the y's. Okay, that's where the 15 comes from, and then we multiply that times 2/3, or whatever it may be. So we took the change in the x, multiply it by 2/3, that gave us 4. Okay, and then we add or subtract depending on which way we're moving. But since we were moving back to the left for the x, we subtracted, and since we were moving down for the y, we subtracted as well. But anyway, negative 2, negative 1 would be our point that is 2/3 from there. So let's see where that point would be. So let's go over to negative 2 and down 1, and that would be our point. That is 2/3 the way from 2/9 to 4, negative 6. Now in this one we're given the endpoint and then the midpoint. Now remember that the midpoint, we know it's going to be x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and then for the y value, it'd be y1 plus y2 has to equal over 2. Well, we know basically we'll just call this x1 and this y1. Okay, and what we're going to do is solve for this here, and then what we know is what these should equal to. So let's start out with the x. So I'm going to substitute in 12 plus, I don't know what x2 is, over 2 has to equal 10. Okay, now we're going to undo the 2. We're dividing by 2 here, so we'll multiply to move to the other side. So we'll multiply both sides by 2, so we end up with 12 plus x2 is equal to 20. We'll subtract 12 from both sides, and x2, or the endpoint that we're looking for, the x value is 6. I'm sorry, it's 8. 12 minus 2 is 8, yeah. Alright, and so then what we're going to do is the same thing for the y values. What we'll do here is put 0 in for y1, but it's all got to equal negative 2. So what we'll do is just multiply both sides by 2 here. So y2 is equal to negative 4. So our point here is going to be 8, negative 4 would be our other endpoint. So if we're given the midpoint, we can come up with the other endpoint. And that's what we did here.